Ecology is the story of how most life harnesses the free energy of the sun for survival. This energy takes many forms as it passes between plants, animals, and the environment. Ken Tate is more than just an amateur kite flyer. He is also a rangeland ecologist with the University of California at Davis.
A herbivore comes along, consumes that forage. That's also an inefficient process, whereas less than 10% of the forage consumed by a herbivore such as a cow is converted to the body mass and thus, say, a steak. Given that this process is so inefficient, why would we raise beef cattle on rangelands? Well, a lot of the Earth's surface is rangeland. It's too dry, too steep, too rocky, and unsuitable to generate some other type of a commodity or product for consumption. And so using the cow is an efficient way to harvest the biomass that is generated on that system.
At a local restaurant, most people probably aren't thinking about the energy cycle. Our packaging and distribution system has used very effective marketing to create a polished product quite different from the living, breathing source. Food comes wrapped or in a box that is long past looking like any kind of animal. Back in Mongolia, Tom Horizon is getting a lesson in direct marketing. The meat goes right from the animal to his stomach with no middlemen.
Right there. Yeah. Okay. So like that.
Huh?
That's
it?
That's it. Knows exactly where to cut through that joint. No saws. It has a little bit of bark on it from the mesenteric fat, which you normally don't get on liver. That's fabulous. Blood sausage wrapped in the intestine.
I'm gonna have a little salt in this.
Oh yeah. Good. A little
Oh, that goodness got a good flavor.
There's that universal organ meat flavor you pick up with liver, heart, and now with kidney, of course.
Eating meat is really only one step from being a vegan. As grass grows, it draws nutrients from the soil. Tom's sheep ate grass, and during the digestive process, it was broken down and the nutrients were absorbed. Livestock are useful for more than just food. Grazers are like a lawnmower. They can be a very helpful tool in maintaining a certain habitat, in this case, a lawn. Ecologists like Jamie Marty with the Nature Conservancy and Mel George of UC Davis are studying how livestock, in the absence of wild herds, maintain California's vernal pools.
So you can see what happens when you don't graze this habitat for a number of years. You start to see a lot more grass growing in and not a whole lot of forbs. And what happens with the removal of cattle grazing is the grasses really start to dominate because cattle prefer feeding on grasses over the forbs. So why don't we go check out a pool that's been grazed? So I think historically the grazing pattern prior to cattle being introduced would have been tule elk and pronghorn sort of sweeping through the grassland. So a lot of these plants have evolved the ability to tolerate grazing. The protection of these habitats doesn't end with the placement of a conservation easement on the land or protection by a local conservancy. The management of the property is equally critical, and as we've seen with the grazing studies, if you remove cattle grazing from these habitats that have been grazed for over a century, the results are not positive for native biodiversity.
In a landscape free of barriers, wild herbivores are usually still around. They follow the best forage in patterns that have developed over thousands of years. Mongolia is one of the few remaining places where wildlife such as the hulan still make their decisions this way.
In the hulan's case, they do have a unique ability to dig down to water. That gives them a competitive advantage over livestock. What we have here is probably in the recent couple of weeks there's been a thunderstorm happen here, or some sort of precipitation event, and then you get this quick regrowth of forage. And for the hulan, they have the ability to seek out these green patches, and often they'll travel hundreds or even thousands of kilometers in terms of seeking out these forage green patches.
In Mongolia, the cattle and sheep have been domesticated, but they're herded in much the same way. This is the foundation of the semi-nomadic system that has been in place for thousands of years.
One of the real opportunities with rangeland, especially in the developing world, is to view rangeland as wildlife habitat, but also a working landscape. Rangeland and grazing are not really as intensive as crop production, for example, or as subdivisions. And so their impact on the environment are lower, and so that the rangelands that have been grazed for 100 or 200 years by domestic livestock still have a lot of the attributes that they may have had prior to the arrival of European man in the United States.